Hi, it's great to be here today with you from Founders Hall in downtown Charlottetown. I'm surrounded by local vendors, local food, and it smells really good. And I have a coffee, which is always a great start to the day. I wanted to give you a quick recap of some of the great work that's been happening in the legislature this fall. I've had a privilege of working on a number of pieces of legislation that matter greatly to me and to Islanders, but also as House Leader, having my hand in on a lot of other things that happen in the House as well, including a large number of the pieces of legislation that went through, but just really how do we get things done? And we've heard a lot about how much we did get done this sitting, and I think we need to be really grateful for that work and what that means for Islanders. In this case, for me, it's about seeing the disabilities legislation pass the House after a large amount of work and a lot of amendments. It also means passing a smaller but important piece of legislation that will help us begin to get a handle on the housing crisis. And that's the legislation that I worked on to get data about short-term rentals across the province, but particularly in Charlottetown, where it's impacting my residents and the constituents in my district. As House leaders, we work together to try and make sure that we are finding common ground as much as possible. But obviously, we're still opposition, and so our role has been to ask really hard questions. And I've had a lot of practice at that after my full 2 years now since I was elected the first time. And I've been pretty consistent about asking questions that otherwise might not get asked in the House, and that includes things like what is happening and what are we doing to help the housing situation? What's happening for people who are living in poverty? What is happening for people who need somewhere to go to be safe at night in the middle of the winter? And we've seen impact and outcome from those questions. So we know that when we stand up and we speak for Islanders who otherwise don't have a voice, things can happen. On a closer to home note, one of the big things that I've been working on consistently is support for a women's shelter in Charlottetown. And we now have Blooming House up and running as the work from an incredible dedicated group of local volunteers who have a full association, non-profit up and running. And we will continue to advocate for support for that shelter. This weekend, I'll be going where I normally do to kind of hear what really matters on a day-to-day from people in my district, and that's to the farmers market, which, much like Founders Hall, is going to be full of great smells and great food and a ton of great conversation. I'll get my coffee and talk to as many people as I can to get the pulse of what's happening in Parkdale and Sherwood and the areas around. And while I'm there, I'll be shopping local, and that's one of the key things that we can do when we want to think about how do we impact local and our community is we buy where we are. This year, to connect all that together, in lieu of Christmas cards, knowing that nobody can read my handwriting anyway, I'll do what I've often done before and make a donation instead of purchasing cards that I know are going to end up in the recycling bin or the landfill. And my donation this year is to Blooming House, knowing that money is going to go directly to support women in need. So I thank you so much for the continued support and the interest and the pressure to do the good work that we need to do to support Islanders, to get things done, to hold government to account, and to make a difference. And I'll see you in 2020.